get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It, Restoration.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Service Guys podcast. This is episode 0, if you will, first episode. And this episode, the whole podcast is actually sponsored by Restore It Restoration out at Jefferson City, Missouri. But before we go forward, we have Lonnie Beecham on the line on the other end. Lonnie,
how you doing, Ruel?
I'm good. So, guys, Lonnie is the service expert, and I'm just, we'll just call me a podcast producer.
And podcast friend.
Yeah. How do we say this? This podcast is sort of the intro, the intro podcast to sort of let folks who are just tuning in know a little bit more about what this podcast is going to become. And I have a gardener doing his thing outside. I don't know if you can hear any of that.
I don't hear anything.
Okay.
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear on my end.
Yeah, that's classic. We both listen to a lot of other podcasts, and that's one of the things that happens when here in podcast land. So yeah.
Welcome to podcasting, folks.
Welcome to podcasting. So the Service Guys podcast is sort of the title that we are going to use to reference the podcast. The title may change. We'll see how things roll. But the idea is, Lonnie, why don't you explain the concept about Service Guys and what that's about?
Well, thank you for allowing me to lay out my thoughts on this. This podcast is designed for people that are always curious about Service Guys, be it people in the HVAC business, pest control, insulation business, any kind of trades business where when you get groups of guys like us together, we always have war stories, and we always talk about the craziest story and the craziest situation we've ever ran across. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of put some of these funny, they're almost always hilarious, funny stories. And when we're going through them, we're always wondering like what is coming next. And I just thought it'd be a great idea to record it and put it on podcasts and help everybody get their names out and share what they do and what their day looks like and how they got started in their service business, and share some of their funny or emotional or scary stories, or the craziest stories that they have. So that's the thought of this podcast, and I hope to be able to bring you a good show to enjoy and listen to.
Oh, I'm sure it is, and you've shared many war stories, if you will, in the past, and it's stuff that I really dig. I mean, in the line of work that you do, it touches everybody's lives. The way I see it, right?
Yeah, everybody has a service guy popping into their home for one reason or another, be it to repair a dishwasher or their furnace system, or when they have a water leak. Which that's my take on this business. Is I'm actually in the water damage and mold remediation business, and provide a few other services. So I'm in and out of people's homes every day, and been doing this for 15 years or so. And just some of the things we see and some of the stories we hear, and every time I think I've seen it all, I get another crazy story that falls in my lap, and then I go home and tell my wife, and then I talk to Ruel and share with him what I just saw yesterday, and it's when you look back on it, it's always entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah, I love it. I tend to save a lot of the stuff that you share, and I forget about it over time. And then when I kind of thumb through like the history, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. I remember that situation. So I think the idea of having these war stories is awesome. Everyone could stand to benefit. If it isn't an educational thing, it's an entertainment thing. I can't wait to get more stories, to hear more out of you.
And one of the things that I always get asked a lot, Ruel, and I wonder this for guys all the time, but people ask me all the time, how did you get into this line of work? And so I always wonder about, the pest control guy. I mean, like, what made him decide to wake up today and go spray for bugs? And I mean, nobody grows up wanting to be a bug man. Nobody wants to wake up to be a HVAC repairman. When we're boys, we always want to be cops and firemen. No one ever says, oh, I want to suck raw sewage out of somebody's basement and sanitize it and get it into a healthy living condition for the family. But somehow we all end up into a situation where we just get into it. And I mean, I love what I do. The stories that I hear are entertaining, but at the end of the day, knowing that I'm taking care of a family and putting their life back to normal and helping people out, it's a great feeling. And when we're out shopping with my friends and family or hanging out or, socializing or whatever, it's great to have customers come up and say thank you and update me on their situation and where they're at. And it's always heartwarming to know that I'm making friends one disaster at a time. But at the end of the day, I do wonder about how do you get into pressure washing? How do you get into window cleaning? How do you get into, pest control or, water damage, fire restoration?
How did you get into what is now restoration? How did you start out?
Well, it was a meandering situation. When I got into this line of work, I had a neighbor that lives down the street. He since moved, but I was doing investment planning and doing the annuities and mutual funds and life insurance and that sort of thing. And I was enjoying life and I was taking care of families and helping people out. And this neighbor, he was in the water and fire damage restoration business. And I knew of him. We were socially friends and neighborhood friends. And he kept asking me, so I want you to come work for me. I need a salesman. I actually got into this business as a salesman. And he was telling me, he's like, oh, we go into houses and everything's wet from one side of the house to the other, from top to bottom. And I was naive. And I said, oh, whatever. I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Houses don't get wet outside of rivers flooding. And he's like, oh no, roofs get blown off and tornadoes. And then we have to go in and make a roof out of nothing and protect the rest of the house and get it dry and then dry out everything. And then finally one day I just told him, I said, well, let's talk numbers. And, he made me a job offer and a pay package. And I thought, well, okay. And I'm a salesman at heart. And, so I go online with him and go to work. And next thing you know, we're kind of expanding and growing really fast. And sales were going through the roof. And we were, selling fires and water damage. And, we were taking care of families. And then that job didn't work out. And next thing you know, I was recruited by an international franchise. And I worked for that first company for a year. And then just we parted ways. And then, I was sitting at home one day with, looking for a job. And I got a phone call out of the blue from the yellow franchise that you see running around your town. And went to work for them, started out as just management. And next thing you know, I was I was running operations out of 2 locations and covering 6 counties. And I was there for, 12 years. And that business, they had some embezzling going on. And, one partner was left holding, nothing. And the other partner made off with a killing and went to court. And long story short, I was kind of forced out on my own to start Restore It Restoration here in Jefferson City, Missouri. And since then, that was 5 years ago, I've been, servicing the mid-Missouri area. And I don't do the fire damage. I specialize in a few things: water damage, carpet cleaning, and mold remediation. And in the last couple of years, I've even gotten into odor control with dead animals and in attics and crawl spaces and inside walls. And we've we've been very fortunate to learn tricks to remove the animals from your, when you get a dead mouse or a dead squirrel, dead bird, I don't know what all I pulled out of walls. The other, last month I pulled a dead possum out of a wall, and and that's all I deal with. I don't chase fires one day and water damage, broken pipes the next day. And then, I don't do the trauma cleanup. There's a whole industry based around the trauma cleanup, and, when people pass away for, horrendous or natural causes, there's a whole industry based on that. I used to do that, but I don't anymore. I just focus on, things relating to water. And in a nutshell, that's like 15, 16 years worth of how I got into restoration. And my tagline and my goal in life is to put people's life back to normal. And so here I am.
And here we are talking about it on this new podcast. Yeah.
Right. I'm excited to get going with this.
There's so many ways we can take it, right? There's carpet cleaning, there's water damage, there's mold remediation, animal cleanup, and a whole lot of other stuff that can spawn off of it. So this is gonna be fun.
Sure.
Yeah. You want to talk about why why don't we pick one and then talk about why it's important and sort of have an example. If we talk about, you brought up fishing out a dead possum from somebody's wall or something. How does that happen? I mean, what causes an animal to get caught in somewhere like somebody's house and in the walls?
Animals they're just like you and I. They want to feed their family. They want somewhere to have a home. They want to stay warm or cool, whichever the season is. They want to stay dry, and they want a place to raise their babies and
Twitter
take care of their young. Well, whenever they get trapped in the attics or crawl spaces or under the belly of a mobile home or something, they don't realize how dangerous it is. But a lot of times, raccoons will get into an attic and they will chew through or claw through a wire that's running through your attic, and they don't realize that they're going to get shocked. And well, they get shocked and electrocuted, and then obviously the family starts smelling the decaying decomposition of a dead animal in their house. And so then they'll call us to come help find it and get rid of it. And sometimes it's quick and relatively easy. Sometimes it involves removing insulation and putting new insulation back in. And sometimes, they're burrowed down and so deep in the insulation that we can't find it with just walking through. And or the attic is so tight that we can't get into the space. So we'll have to remove the insulation and expose the carcass and remove it. And then we spray it down with a sanitizing solution, and the solution I use takes care of all the malodors immediately. And we go about our business. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating stuff. If it were me, I'd try to find a carcass on my own. I mean, I'd smell the thing. I'd try to clean it up myself and dispose it myself and deodorize it myself. But that probably, I'm guessing, it isn't the safest thing to do if you can spot the dead animal. Why?
Well, not only is it not safe, but a lot of the times if you have a raccoon or possum or something living in your attic, well, they're doing their bathroom business. And a lot of times these animals, their feces will have deadly bacteria associated with them, like bats. We clean up a lot of bat guano, and I know everybody wants it for their garden, but when we're up there in a confined space and we're removing the bat guano, we're stirring up the fungus that's associated with it, and it's called histoplasmosis. That's the most common one. There's 4 or 5 others that are associated, but they're not as likely. So you, first of all, you are able-bodied to get up in your attic, and B, not everyone is. So imagine your mother, and she has this going on in her attic. Well, she's not going to go up in an attic. And not only that, anytime you're in the attic, there's always risk. I mean, you're risking, getting electrocuted. There's sharp objects. Every time I go in an attic, I get flesh wounds all over the place from all the roofing nails that are poking through. And even though I'm wearing the personal protective equipment, the suits and the masks and the gloves and the boots and, all that stuff. It's not very safe for a homeowner to go remove a dead carcass, not to mention the gory factor and the ooze and the stuff that's going on there. It's never clean and quick and easy to just remove a dead raccoon. By the time you're smelling it in your living room, it's been dead for days or weeks, and certain times of the year, I mean, they can start stinking really fast. So yes, if you can, go for it, but I don't recommend it. Leave it for a pro.
Yeah, the thought of catching histoplasmosis doesn't sound good. I don't even know what that is. Sounds like something out of the Ghostbusters movie.
It sounds like it. Histoplasmosis, I never thought about that. That's kind of funny, Ruel. It's a lung fungus. So by the time, and it mimics so many other illnesses. Like for me, it's a job hazard. If I came down with a weird lung issue going on, I would tell my doctor immediately, check me for histoplasmosis. And I forget what all it mimics, but none of them are good scenarios. But usually for a homeowner that gets into the bat guano or something, and they contract histoplasmosis, usually this is sad, but it's true. Usually they are, by the time they figure out it's histoplasmosis, they're usually dead. They usually find out what it is on an autopsy because it mimics so many other things, and the doctors will draw some blood, and they'll treat them for a host of illnesses, and once they start ruling that out, oh, it's not this, well, let's try that, let's try this because it's not that, and then next thing you know, the people are dying because they literally can't breathe.
That's horrible. That's horrible. But
that's why we go into an attic wearing full protective equipment.
Now that's one thing. The bats and dead animals. We can go like several episodes, on each of the different types of dead carcasses you come up with, or the different services. And
well, we treat them all the same. If it's a dead mouse in a wall, believe it or not, people think, oh, the smell will go away in a day or two. It's not that big a deal. I've actually had conversations with people over 6-8 weeks over a dead mouse in their wall. They'll call me, and then we talk about the scenario and what it's going to take to get rid of it. And almost always, I can get a dead mouse out of your wall without actually cutting a hole in your sheetrock in a visible spot. And but people always think, well, it'll be gone in a day or two. I was just curious what it would cost, or if you can do anything about it. And it can take, as I know for a fact, at least 6 weeks. And then people are always amazed. But if you think about it, if a dead mouse, if a mouse dies in a barn or in the field or outside your home, well, it's exposed to air and other, beetles and fungus and other things, not mushrooms, but the things that eat on dead, decaying items. But if they're dead inside of a wall cavity, they're not exposed to air, so they're not drying out. They're not exposed to the other critters that eat dead animals. So there's nothing there to consume the carcass, basically, and it'll take weeks, if not months, to get rid of that smell on its own. It will go away eventually, but how long do you want to smell that?
So they're basically like mummies. They're just caught in a contained environment and just slowly deteriorating.
Correct.
Yeah, we've had conversations in the past. I had a field mice problem where they were somehow getting in our garage, and I was catching mice like almost every day on my little trap.
I remember that.
And and it freaks me out because I'd have to pull the trap, and I'd have to release the mouse into the dead mouse into like I'll put them in the green cart so that it's compost basically, right? And
right.
It just freaks me out. Like, oh my gosh, what if this thing has some sort of disease that I might catch if I'm not careful? Off this little tiny furry thing would.
Yeah, mice are actually pretty nasty. They're very common and they're very nasty.
They're very cute and they're very nasty. And I'm glad that they weren't mice or rats or shrews. Shrews, they're like the ugliest thing. And I don't know the difference.
They kind of are, but they're more of a mole. That's a ground rodent, I think. I'd have to pull in one of my animal control friends to discuss the difference between a shrew and a mole and other burrowing animals.
So I can see a whole lot of fun and a whole lot of war stories coming out of the dead animal cleanup world.
Oh, every facet of just my business alone, there's nuances to it. And somebody asked me yesterday, do you ever watch the show Hoarders? And truthfully, I have, but I don't make it a priority because I live with that. When water damage happens in your home, it always ends up in the basement. And where does most people store their junk that they need to get rid of? They know they need to get rid of it, but they never do. I always find it in the basement. So yeah, there's never ending twist to every one of just my facets, but I'm curious to learn about other people's nuances of their business.
I wonder, there's probably is there like a common thing that most people deal with, but they sort of overlook it, but it can be a problem, whether it be something to do with water or mold or carpets? Is there something?
Well, the commonalities in all that is usually due to lack of maintenance. When you own a home or even rent a home, most renters don't do anything for maintenance, and the landlords don't want to do it either. So renters tend to have the most problems in this regard. But when you own a home or live in your own individual dwelling, there's a certain amount of maintenance you have to do. You have to clean your gutters. You have to keep the water away from your foundation. You need to have your carpets cleaned once a year if you're going to, keep a healthy home. There's, you can't just let a small leak go, forgotten about. I mean, if you got a leak in your house, you need to fix it. It's cheaper to have a pro come in and dry you out or fix it, repair it, replace it, whatever it is, than wait for it to fester into a situation where you have mold. It's all about maintenance. I mean, if you don't do good maintenance, hopefully people can learn some good maintenance tips along the way in this podcast, but it all boils down to maintenance. Don't wait for a small problem to become a bigger problem.
And it's not just cosmetic stuff that's a problem. We're talking about, or you're talking about, things potentially leading to health causes for health issues, right?
Very quickly. Even certain water damage situations can immediately pose a health threat to your family. And if it's a pipe that breaks, that's drinkable water. But if it's water that comes up from underneath your toilet or out of the toilet bowl itself, that's an immediate health risk. Immediate. And that's another situation where we come in wearing the Tyvek suits and the respirators and the gloves and the boots and the whole 9 yards. So I think this is a little case for people to get a feel for what the plan is here. I
think it's a great taste for us to start off of and decide how we want to keep sharing the stories from the world of Lonnie Beecham, restoration, and then the environmental, how do you describe it? Environmental Indoor environment.
Indoor environment. Everything I deal with is indoor environmental issues.
Awesome. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to many more.
I'm excited.
It sounds like we both are going to wrap up, and we should try and figure out a way to sign off these podcasts, but maybe just simply something along the lines of, remember, folks, gosh, I don't know. This is going to be good. We got to figure this out. Do you have any ideas?
No, I hadn't thought this far, Ruel.
This is awesome. This is pure. This is the pureness of starting a podcast. Somehow I think it would be great to just, remind folks that they can go to restorerestoration.com, right? That's
Correct.
Restoration.com and find out more about what you do. I think it'd be great. It's a great resource, and I think it's a great way for folks to even try to get a hold of you if they have questions regarding their sort of indoor environment, if you will. Is that safe to say that folks can reach out to you and
most definitely.
I think somehow integrating when you use Restore Restoration or other folks in similar industries, you're always looking to, what was your tagline?
Put your life back to normal.
Cool.
So for right now, we could end on a note saying, I don't know. I had a thought, but now I forgot.
This is awesome. Why don't we just say bye for now, and then we'll catch everybody on the next episode.
Yes. And in the meantime,
I'm producer Rue, and bye for now.
And I'm Lonnie Beecham. Thanks for listening. Get your life back to normal.
They'll get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It Restoration.